so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast. We are previewing Indiana's upcoming game against Washington. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is T.J. Inman, and we welcome back friend of the show, Rhett Lewis, who will be on the sideline for BTN this weekend to do the Washington-Indiana game. Rhett, welcome in. What a change over the last 2 years when you were sitting next to me in the radio booth, and it was almost as miserable as you could be.
Oh goodness, yeah, that's all the Hoosiers needed was to get rid of me out of the booth, and now all of a sudden we're talking about 7-0 and college football playoff, and my goodness, I mean, you know, the greatest thing that I think I've seen in the last couple of days, certainly following the Nebraska domination, was the texts, right, that you get from people who have been in Bloomington for decades and said that 3 hours that Saturday was the best football Saturday that they can remember. Like, that, man, says something about a new program, not a new program, but a new era for a program in its first year under the leadership of a new head coach, to find that kind of culture changing success, not just within the program, but externally. You just don't see that very often.
Yeah, I always go back to the 07 bucket game as the standard of atmosphere for games, and this probably surpassed it. Now, maybe not in what it meant to the program at the time, in terms of Coach Hep and all that stuff, and beating Purdue for the first time since 2001. But man, parking lots were packed early. This is, if you could package this up and sell this as a college football Saturday in Bloomington, you couldn't draw up a better day. It was 70 degrees. Sunny, not a cloud in the sky, and Indiana came out and scored 5 touchdowns on apparently the indestructible Nebraska defense that had not given up a touchdown all year. So, Rhett, we got to ask. Yeah, you were around the program the last 2 years. At the end of the Tom Allen era, Kirk Cignetti comes in, says Purdue sucks, but so does Michigan and Ohio State. He's not taking a backseat to anybody. Is this beyond wildest expectations, or is this like it could happen?
Yeah, I think there was definitely a vibe. Like, even going back to like when the schedule came out, you were kind of like, like this sets up nicely early, right? And then you knew you were going to get some tough games, in November in the back end of the schedule, just kind of like as the Hoosiers have always had, playing in the Big Ten East, and it wasn't all that different in November this year, with the exception of Penn State not being there. So I think there was I wouldn't say an expectation, but a belief that this team could really make some hay early in the year. I think the way that they have done it has been the unexpected part. Like, I was on a bunch of shows going into the Nebraska game last week, and I truly believed that this was going to be a fourth quarter game. Like, it was going to be decided in the fourth quarter. And I felt like that's where Indiana's mettle in the fourth quarter, outscoring opponents 80-17 going into last week, was going to ultimately give them the edge. And that's what I kept saying. I did not expect 56-7. Right. And the way that they have closed out opponents and kept the foot on the throat and the pedal to the floor, I think has been one of the most admirable assets to this team so far this season. So, yeah, I think it was not totally unexpected that they've had early success, but I think the dominating way in which it has come, Sammy and TJ, has been the thing that has been surprising to me.
Yeah, and I hate to put basketball on a football show, but they use these basketball-like runs where they go, you saw it at UCLA, is 21-7, then boom, all of a sudden it's 42-13. Against Nebraska, it was 14-7. All of a sudden it's 28-7 at halftime. Interception, 35-7, the game's over. You saw it against Charlotte. You saw it. I mean, the whole game against Western Illinois was a giant run. But you saw it against every single opponent. Northwestern, when they got to 27-20,
yeah.
24, you go, boom,
Same
all of
thing
a
for
sudden.
Maryland.
Yeah, same thing. So it's those runs where they stack touchdown and scoring drives together. What has been we talk about the offense and Kurtis Rourke.
Mm-hmm.
He came former MAC Player of the Year. Expectations were he's a veteran guy, make all the throws. Did you think he would have a Heisman Trophy type season?
Look, I think it's if you said that, I think you're crazy. Like if you said that coming in, I mean, like, like put your hand down. You didn't say that, like I don't think anybody said that coming in. I think there was an expectation that you were getting a very mature, experienced, and previously productive player. Now, how that was going to translate, I think, is always a little bit of an unknown. Like what is the fit really going to be? With this team. And I think that is kind of my overriding and overarching biggest takeaway with Coach Cignetti and this staff is that when you look at the offensive production, like outside of what Anderson Kobe had one touchdown so far this year, Omar's had a couple, but outside of those two guys, everybody that is scoring for Indiana was not here last year. Every touchdown, and they're scoring at a record pace. So I think when you look at it that way, you see the success that they've had in talent evaluation, right? Understanding this guy, we like this guy's skills. I think this guy will fit with us. So you're seeing really good skill, you're seeing a really good scheme fit, and then you're seeing development. Like Kurtis Rourke was not a Heisman Trophy candidate against FIU, but against Nebraska, damn right he was. Like, until he got hurt. And same thing going back, the last couple of games. He's seen improvement week over week. And I think that's a credit to the coaching staff and Tino Sinceri and Mike Shanahan and look, I mean, John Miller, the work he's done with the running backs and that whole new quartet has been phenomenal. Like, I just think that they have a great eye for talent. They have a terrific scheme. And when you have developers as coaches too, that's when you see talent and scheme marry into production.
Yeah, look, Kirk Cignetti clearly has an ego, but he is not stubborn in terms of this is my scheme. You're going to have to fit into it. He'll mold his scheme to the quarterback. We've seen it at JMU, with different types of quarterbacks where he goes, okay, this is what you're good at. This is what we're going to do. Let's talk about the offensive line a little bit too. Right in the spring, I believe you said it, or somebody on the BTN spring game said it, that the coaching staff, the group that they were most confident in was the offensive line. And if you've watched Indiana football over the last 3 years, that's a mind-blowing statement. What about the Bob Bostad and Mike Kadick coming back gave this staff confidence that this offensive line was going to roll over people? You had Mike Kadick picking up two linebackers on a blitz at the same time, paving the way for a touchdown run.
I mean, it's incredible because 2 years ago, I saw Mike Kadick pick up 0 of those blitzers on like a similar type of play. And I think, Big Cat is a legend now. And like, I am so happy with what he's done and with what the team has done for a guy like that, who's been here, saw what it could be, back in the 2019, 2020 run, and then went through some real lean years to get back to this point. And so I'm happy for him. And I think that Bob Bostad's attention to detail with this group, his commitment to get this group back to like physicality and like playing with an edge and practicing with an edge and, digging in on the sleds and getting those, that kind of detail and that physical work and putting that work in, I think has been a big deal for this group. And what the other thing that I think is he also has helped in his title as run game coordinator kind of simplify some things for those guys up front that kind of helped ease the transition to a new scheme for that group, because they don't look like a group that, even early on, like that group was solid, and so I think that they've done a great job at making things, simpler, whereas they can block any front on any play with minimal issue. Right. And so they've changed up some of the things that maybe, Shanahan and Sinceri were doing at JMU in the run game to make it easier on this group up front and get the most out of them. So I think it's just been a great collaborative effort with that offensive coaching staff that's really allowed this offensive line to kind of get out there and play. And let's not forget, they've been down a starter since the beginning of the season, right? With Kidwell out, and Drew Evans and Bray Lynch have been terrific at guard. I've been really impressed with both those guys, and Kadick holds it down in the middle. And I mean, Carter Smith's an NFL player at left tackle. I mean, it's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And hopefully we get him for a little while longer before he makes that jump.
Yeah, and Trey Wettig, the only guy that has come in as a new addition on that starting group. Yeah. He had a game or two early that kind of left a little bit to be desired, but he's been outstanding really in the past month. Switching over to the other side of the ball, I think for us, Hoosier Huddle, we talked about it a lot, a concern about maybe the depth of that unit, particularly up front. What have you thought about the play of the defensive line? Mikael Kamara looks like an absolute star, but they've gotten really good contribution from guys that you expected, and then some that maybe you didn't expect to do a lot. What have been your thoughts about the defense overall, but especially that front?
Yeah, TJ, good question. I think the front was leaving spring. It was like, okay, what do we got to make some moves here. And they did. They did, right? And went and got CJ West, which was a huge deal and a huge get for this group. Tyreek Tucker has been a huge depth piece, a really good player. And so you've got 5 guys up there now with CJ and James Carpenter and Tyreek and Marcus Burris. And then, Mario Landino as a freshman, he came back in. Did he miss Northwestern? He got hurt at Northwestern or something. He didn't play a bunch.
He missed Northwestern.
That's what it was. Right. So got, banged up a little bit, and they call him crash test because he'll just sticks his face into the fire. Like I think he's going to be a big time player for this program moving forward. Jacob Mangum for our size was snaps of the season, I believe, against Brass with 24 snaps. So like those guys are fun. And then I thought Linnell Carr played one of his better games too, and had a big snap count in this game. All the defensive guys did. They were on the field, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I thought just did a fantastic job. So I love the depth. Pat Kuntz does a great job with the interior guys there. Buddha and his crew, with the edge guys, like they're coached well. They know what they need to do. And I just think that they have the freedom to make some adjustments right to their play-to-play, rep-to-rep responsibilities, because you got guys like Aiden Fisher and Jalen Walker behind you that can cover some stuff up. Like if you believe you can shoot and find a way to get, cause some havoc in the backfield, they have confidence that, all right, if I got out of what I'm supposed to do a little bit, I know that, Aiden can make that up, or Jalen can make that up, or, Isaiah Jones can make that up. So I think that's been a really encouraging piece to see how that front seven kind of works together.
I think the most impressive part of this defense has been the tackling. Rhett, they did not tackle in spring. They did not tackle in fall camp. Yeah, you've played the game at the college level. Just how difficult is that, or what adjustments you have to do in practice to come out and, they didn't – usually in the first game there's some missed tackles just because of game speed. But what about that philosophy has been so impressive that there was no tackling in practice, and you come out and you're probably one of the best tackling teams in the country.
Boy, watching some of these defensive backs in the secondary make open field tackles against Nebraska, like, D'Lo Pons. And, here's another thing. Terry Jones, I thought was a real nice fit at Rover. And then moving Amari Farrell to safety back there, I think just puts your best 5 defensive backs on the field. And that's a way to do it. And I think they kind of schemed some things up with the coverage in the back end too, that we can get to later. But the tackling aspect of it, I think, comes down to you've got veteran players out there. These are not like, for the most part. I mean, look at Sean Asbury is an experienced player in college football. Same for Jameer Johnson in the secondary, and Terry Jones, right? Coming from ODU, like that group has made a lot of tackles, and the same goes for Aiden Fisher and Jalen Walker, and the majority of those guys up front have been around the block in college football a lot. So like they've got a lot of time on task in tackling, which I think really helps. And then look, just because you're not tackling in practice doesn't mean you're not teaching tackling in practice. And that's what they do every day. And I mean, like, this has been a clinic on well-coached football teams this year. I mean, it's so many different areas that they have just been fantastic and fundamentals. So tackling is definitely a big piece of it, Sammy.
Yeah, and as a player, when Coach Signetti says, "Hey, you're in, you do your work, you're out," and it's less than 2 hours, how awesome is that?
Well, I mean, I think it's inspiring, right? I think it makes you bring the juice like from the jump, right? If we're gonna get this thing done efficiently and we do it well enough, we know that we're not gonna have to go all in for 3 hours in practice because we're getting what we need to get done. And when you can meet Signetti's standard and still do that, you got something going because that is a high standard.
All right, let's pivot to the Washington game. Indiana, 13th country hosts Washington this week. A lot of fanfare. ESPN's College Game Day is coming to Bloomington.
First time as a Saturday game.
Yep, first time as a Saturday game, sold out crowd. It's a red out as well. They announced today. Rhett, what are your initial thoughts on this game? Indiana will start Taven Jackson at quarterback. He looked much better against Nebraska than he did against Western Illinois and Charlotte, where he looked kind of slow getting to his spots, but he looked phenomenal, and the improvement from last year to this year is outstanding.
I mean, what was it? 2 touchdowns on his first 4 attempts.
He should have. He should have been 8 for 8 with 3 touchdowns. Kobe drops a ball that he probably scores on that crossing route.
So I mean, like I think Taven's improvement goes right along with what you've seen from Kurtis Rourke's improvement. Like because Kurtis had improvement from week 1 to week 7 or week 8, whatever, and I think same can be said for Taven Jackson. It's more time on task, more time in the system, and I think Taven's a much younger player than Kurtis, so like it's not going to happen like that, like it kind of has for Kurtis. So I think it's been a steady progression for Taven, and look, let's not forget. I mean, like this dude had a whale of a second half in the Louisville game last year. I mean, almost brought this team back to a win in that game. And so, like, he has. I think you could say he arguably has more talent than Kurtis, like top end, top shelf, like high ceiling talent. So I think it's really exciting. And I know my broadcast partner Guy Haberman went out and sat down with Trace Jackson Davis out at Warriors practice this week, and so we'll have some fun stuff about Taven. Coming from his older brother, of course, a legend on campus here from his work with the Hoop Squad. So there's a lot to look forward to, I think, for Taven. I think it's an opportunity, too, for him, with this being Kurtis's last run in college football, to say, hey, to the coaches, like, you can go out and keep recruiting quarterbacks, but let's not forget that I'm here and that I got a lot of talent. And how valuable would it be for Indiana to feel like they have a starting quarterback going into spring ball next year?
Sure.
Like I think that's something that Taven has an opportunity to kind of start proving here in this game. So I think that's going to be great. And man, what a time to be in Bloomington, man. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. Everyone keeps asking me like, what's it like? What's it like when that thing's rocking? What's it like when I'm like, guys, I don't know. I've never been there when it was. Yeah. I mean, like my biggest game there was 2001, but it was the 2001 bucket game. In the September 11th year, and it was, fans rushed the field. They tore down a goalpost, as I remember, and so like that was the biggest game that I was a part of, and so I can't wait to see what it's going to be like in front of a truly packed house.
Yeah, let me ask you. Yeah. We talked a lot, justifiably so, about Mike Shanahan, Tino Sinceri, Curt Cignetti, their offensive plan. What adjustments do you think they make with a week to prepare Taven as the starter? It's not going to be wholesale changes, doesn't need to be. But what adjustments or tweaks do you think that this coaching staff looks to implement to accentuate what Taven Jackson's comfortable with going against a Washington defense that has been susceptible to the run?
Yeah, I think you might see some QB run game. I think, he does have a little bit more of the athleticism than Kurtis does. So I think I think you might see that a little bit with Taven. But I think you want to get him into a rhythm. Like, you remember the spring game. Like, he got into a rhythm quick. And, like, I remember leaving the spring game going, like, which Taven Jackson was this? Yeah. And so I think he is a rhythm passer to me. Because, like, when he's on, like, it's like one of those things, like with a shooter hitting threes. Like, that's what it feels like with Taven. And he's got such elite talent with his arm that I think, finding consistent completions just fuels that fire. with him. So I think that'll be key. I think that, he knows what this offense expects. Like, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot different here. Put the ball in the hands of your playmakers and give them an opportunity to go make a play with it. And I think that's something that he understands. He's got to play this game with great eye discipline. And if he is seeing defenses and seeing the game at a high level, I don't think you'll see any drop off. Like, that's the thing. Like, if he understands what's coming at him and he's able to diagnose it. Now, look, that's easier said than done this week. Talking about Steve Belichick, right? Bill Belichick's son leading Washington's defense as their D coordinator. And so, like, he's, going to have some stuff geared to try to confuse Taven and make things different and cloudy the picture on him. So I think that's where Tino's coaching comes in at the quarterback spot to say, hey, let's simplify this thing. Let's give you some winners. Let's understand, try to kind of simplify things a little bit, just like as the play is developing. Like, let's understand where we need to go with the football, and let's understand how to get to that read and that decision quick enough to where we can get out there and make plays.
Rhett, on all our pregame podcasts, we go through multiple things. One of them is matchup to watch. If you had to circle one matchup that you're keeping your eye on Saturday, whether it's Indiana's receivers against Washington's DBs, what are you watching?
Yeah, man, it's a good question because and I'm really going to dig in to the Washington tape as we go forward here this week. But I think one of the things I'll see is like Ephesians Prysock is a really good corner for them, number 7. I think Zach Durfee is a really good edge rusher for them. So I think minimizing pressure on Taven will be something, just so that, he doesn't start the game feeling, uncomfortable. I think will be big. And then this is a Washington defense that has shown susceptibility in the run game. Like, go back to the Iowa game, right? Go back to the Rutgers game. Now they were able to, to win that Rutgers game, or no, they didn't. They fell short in both those games. But I think those, the running back group being able to kind of buoy this thing for Indiana and kind of handle themselves there, I think will be big. And then the last thing is on the matchup wise is in the secondary for IU's defense. Moving parts last week. I think they found a great combination. I think they'll be tested more this week with Will Rogers, a more veteran quarterback. So, than Dylan Raiola. And can they still find a way to limit big plays and limit? I know Kurt Signetti said he was very impressed with that Washington wide receiver core, and I am too, but they're not what they were a year ago. But still, like, big plays is something that can ruin this game for IU. So keeping everything in front of you, if you're Amari Farrell and Sean Asbury and Terry Jones and in the corners, Jameer Johnson and D'Angelo Pons, I think will be of the utmost importance in this matchup. And look, and obviously dealing with Jonah Coleman, who's a big physical runner. So gang tackling and not letting balls fly over you this week.
Yep. Really good possession receivers for Washington. Denzel Boston has 9 touchdowns already this year. Giles Jackson leads their team in catches. Both of them right around 6 catches per game. Good possession receivers for sure. And again, I think that a lot of people on Nebraska's side thought that their height and kind of physicality at wide receiver was going to cause problems for Indiana's secondary. Turns out they just couldn't get open. So physicality not going to be a big issue if you can't get open.
Right.
But for me, the matchup that I chose was Indiana keeping Taven on schedule by having success in the run game.
Yes.
You mentioned Washington being susceptible against a run. They should have won that Rutgers game, had a 200-plus yard edge on Rutgers. Special teams issues cost them in that game. Iowa just beat them around. And something that I don't know if they figure that's out with their second trip coming in playing at a noon East start. They had problems with it previously. So I don't know if that's going to play into it. But I think keeping Taven comfortable, like you said, getting into rhythm, but just keeping on schedule with the successful running game. I don't think it's totally out of the question to think that IU, is able to replicate what they did against Nebraska. And if they can get 5-6 yards per carry come the end of the day, you feel really good about your chances.
Yeah, TJ, I would say that, when you look at Nebraska's front on defense, like you'd say that that's a more talented defensive front than Washington, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be, as easily manipulated as it was for Indiana. Easily is probably not the right word, but manipulated in a way that was successful for IU. And so I think that's something to watch there, is how they're able to find some lanes with those guys. Now, let's also keep in mind that Washington's coming off a bye week here, right? Yep. So, you've got Steve Belichick with 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana's offense, and let's see what he comes up with. Now, the third
game that Indiana's playing a team coming off a bye week.
The third already?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the fourth. You had UCLA, Northwestern.
Well, yeah.
Nebraska. Yeah. And then Washington.
Now Washington. Yeah, good point. Yeah. And I feel like that was the case for IU last year, or maybe it was head coaching changes. They had a bunch of them a couple of years ago too that we were on the flip side of. But I think the thing that I would say is, with a Belichick coach defense, you remember, they always wanted to take something away, right? They always wanted to make you a little bit left-handed. Yep. I don't know what that is for IU. Like, I don't think that you can just sit here and say, I'm going to take away Elijah Surratt. Miles times 2 will find a way to beat you, or Keyshawn Williams, or just hand it off to this, trio or quartet of running backs. So like, I think it's kind of hard to identify what you want to take away if you are a defense that looks to do that. So I'll be really curious to see what Steve Belichick does.
Rhett, you are a West Coast guy now.
Yep.
How difficult is it traveling east for a 9 a.m. body clock game to the travel routine for football? You guys are up early and stuff like that. How does this throw a wrench in plans, or will it affect Washington as much as some people think?
I think it'll feel early for a little while, but like for the guys that are playing, like once you're into warm-ups, man, it's like we're going. We're going. It's you're playing a game and you're fired up for it. I don't think, like, talking about 20-year-old kids. I mean, you guys remember when you were 20, right? Did something like this, it didn't faze me. Yeah, like I don't think that that's as big a deal. It might feel a little different for the coaches. I mean, actually, we talked to Greg Schiano about that last week when our crew was doing UCLA Rutgers. It's like, he's bringing his team out Wednesday night to battle USC on Friday night. So he's like, they're going out 2 days early. They're doing that whole thing. People are getting the body clocks on. Like UCLA was, when they went out to Rutgers, they were starting on Tuesday, they were going to go to sleep a half hour earlier than they normally would. Then on Wednesday, they're going to sleep an hour earlier than they would. Then on Thursday, it was an hour and a half earlier than it was, all in an effort to get on to Eastern time by the time they got there on Friday. So, I think there's a lot of different schools of thought. Ultimately, it's just going to come down to who executes, man. Like, I don't think we're going to talk about that much.
Kind of like Kirk Signetti's attitude on flying. Yeah, we're going to fly out Friday, have dinner, go to bed, have breakfast, and kick some butt, and come home.
Yeah, go home. Yeah, that's I like that philosophy too.
Yeah, that's what I did. Flew in Saturday morning, flew out Saturday night.
Right,
easy peasy. TJ, any final questions before you have to jump off?
No, I'm good. I can hang around till we're done. I know Rhett has important side business.
Yes, that's right.
We were hoping to get jettisoned onto our podcast, but anyway, no, we're not going to make you predict the game. We typically do.
Appreciate that.
Know that you're professionally obligated.
I got to put the IU colors to bed after today. I think. We got to start playing this thing down the middle. So. Especially as I got when my Zoom's up, we've got production calls with Washington staff coming up here in a little while too. So hopefully they can appreciate the professionalism that will go along with this thing, and just understand that it's been pretty damn cool though to see what's happening in Bloomington.
We are not held by the same
That's
lofty
right. You can do what you got to do, brother.
We can let our flags fly. My prediction, and I think I predicted a higher scoring game than most people did against Nebraska. I didn't give IU's defense enough credit, but I did think Indiana would move the ball on Nebraska's defense. I've developed a perhaps unhealthy dose of blind faith towards this offensive staff. This is a hurdle now for them to clear with a different quarterback. They do have a week to prepare for it, and that's a benefit. But I I think Washington has more talent than people maybe just look at their record and assume that they have. I think that they had some early season issues getting everybody acclimated to a new coaching staff. It was not a staff, unlike Indiana, it was not a staff that came, all as one and was right. Used to each other. So there was a feeling out period for them. And maybe this bye week helped them kind of sort of iron out some of the kinks that they've had early in the season. But Indiana has done nothing but respond to every challenge placed in front of them so far. So I'm going to go with Indiana taking this game. 40 points seems to be the low bar for this Indiana offense. So I'm going to go with Indiana doing it again. 42, because Curt Cignetti doesn't want to kick field goals. So 42-21 in favor of the Hoosiers.
Like it.
Yeah, poor Nico Radicic has a chance to set the record for the all-time point score for Indiana, but he's going to do it all on extra points. Right. It seems like. But yeah, I think Washington's 0-3 away from Husky Stadium, or what Alaska Airlines Field, whatever they call it now. Coming east, you saw that sample size against Iowa. They got beat pretty bad. IU just has the juice right now. I think their offense, like Rhett said, who do you take away? If you take away Elijah Surratt, you've got somebody else. In the running game, no running back had over 9 carries last week, and yet they averaged 7 yards per carry on non-sack rushing yards with 5 touchdowns. I just think IU has too much offense for Washington. I'll give Nico Radicic a field goal as well. I'll go 45-21 Indiana in front of a sold-out Memorial Stadium crowd. And Rhett, let me tell you, being there last week, it's loud. And it's impressive.
Right. All right. I'm ready. I've got my noise canceling earbuds ready for the broadcast. So we're ready to rock and roll with this thing, man.
Yeah, I'd take them out for a second and soak it in, because it is pretty awesome.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks to Rhett Lewis,
guys.
Yeah, thanks. As always, Rhett Lewis will be on the sidelines for BTN this week. Enjoy the rest of the week, Rhett. TJ, thanks for joining us as well. You can follow us at Hoosier_Huddle on Twitter. HoosierHuddle.com for all your Indiana football news and notes for the rest of the season.